something that we've spoken about many times in the past, but basically it's sowing and reaping. So sowing and reaping, the basis of it's a metaphor for the actions versus consequences of us as humans. Basic definition of metaphor is it's a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is applied to an object or action. So in terms of sowing, the actual definition of sowing is to plant a seed. All right. The definition of reaping is to gather a crop. So sowing and reaping is in terms of the actual definitions of it are applied in terms of farming. But if you think sowing and reaping is used as a metaphor, as an example for us to express actions versus consequences. So our actions, which are first led by our choices, go to actions, and then from actions we get consequences. So the Bible speaks in terms of sowing and then reaping. And I'm just kind of going over that for young people because for us old heads, we've heard this a bunch of times. Through the use of metaphors, and I mean, for us that grew up in the era of rap and hip hop, most of rap and hip hop and a lot of songs are made around metaphors. And that's kind of what, we like in our communities here, is to listen to things based on metaphors. But, sowing and reaping, so actions versus consequences. And what came to me was, when we look at the actions that are going on in today's world, most specifically, these mass shootings, this topic of gun control, you just see this attack on just the youth, the very young people of this world. And it's coming in many different shapes and forms. And every now and then I think about years ago I talked to this lady. She said she ran daycares for the Navy for many years before she retired. She said one thing that she learned about children that had emotional issues and a lot of mental issues was that they weren't being given proper boundaries at home. So they were given this pathway in life where they could basically choose what they wanted to do while they were at home. When did they want to go to bed? Whenever they felt like it. When was it time to eat? Whenever they felt like eating. They weren't given these boundaries, these routines that they had to live and work by at home, and it began to mess with their psyche. So, they got to a point where they didn't know what was right and what was wrong because no one was reinforcing right versus wrong. And it began to create other issues. So I see that now more so in today's world. So what am I talking about? The first thing I thought about was the idea of civil unions. Years ago, they made it legal to have a civil union, and that's where you can be same sex, and marriage wasn't legal, but they could document you as having a civil union. That's where you had access to your mate's healthcare insurance and these other benefits that you get when you're married. So it started there, all right? And that was really a tug in society to try to start redefining Christianity. And I thought about some of the stuff that Homer spoke about last Sunday, where we're at a point now where people are just trying to redefine Christianity. They're trying to redefine what they call being a Christian. Right. So they're tearing away at those boundaries that have already been set by God from the beginning. And for us that have been around for a while, of course, we're not going to go for that. We know better. But guess who's coming up behind us? This younger generation. So it's an attack on young people. Because, hey, What does the devil see in all of this? If he can somehow tear away those boundaries, if he can somehow corrupt Christianity, then he takes away the understanding of right versus wrong for young people. And then it creates these emotional issues, these problems that we're beginning to see. You start to see more shootings. Because I don't care what you say, you're 18 years old, you're still a young kid. It's a whole lot that you just don't know. You go argue that with your parents, because I'm going to have an 18-year-old here soon, and for those of us that got older, teenagers, let them argue that with you. But that's where it's heading, and that's what I keep saying. So this sowing and reaping, this world is sowing a seed, and then you see the world reaping the benefits or reaping the consequences of those decisions. So now, you start with those civil unions, it's redefining things, all right? Then you go down to gender identity. That's been a big one lately. So, I kind of made a brief definition without, trying to get too upset about things, but gender identity is a personal sense of having a particular gender. Basic definition, right? So you can decide what gender you want to be on what day of the week, from hour to hour, however you feel. And to confirm the way you feel, we have our alternate communities, the LGBT, whatever. Right. We're trying to create laws and lobby for executive orders to support how you feel on any given day. Day. Any day of the week. And day, right. So, if you feel one way today, you feel one way tomorrow, it doesn't matter how you look, it's how you feel, it's what you identify as. So, there's been an executive order signed in the past where men can use the restroom with women. And because of the executive order, by law, technically it says that if you don't allow that to happen, you're infringing on civil rights. There's mindset behind it. So, that's sowing a seed to pull away, to tug at the boundaries that have already been set here in society. Us as the older generation, you're right. It might be a fight because we're not going for it, right? But what about a fifth grader, a fourth grader, a third grader? They're looking to us for leadership, right? So now they're saying, well, hey, boys can go in the bathroom with girls, girls can go in the bathroom with boys. I can be a girl today, boy tomorrow. That's what they're telling me, right? Whatever I feel, right? So at the root cause of it, it's tearing away those boundaries. So then we get back to what the devil is trying to do, which is to destroy young people. That's the whole thing behind what I'm seeing. And every now and then I'll talk to somebody. I'll talk to another teacher. Sometimes I stop and talk to, there's a security guard over there I talk to from time to time. And I just talk to other adults. And I just start hearing these responses of where, they're like, hey, it's getting to the point where young people don't know what direction to go in. Based on where society is trying to take things. Now, of course, if you're in a household and I'm speaking about a child, and they're getting a set of rules, regulations, routines that they have to follow, and they're being told why these rules, regulations, and routines are in place for their benefit, then of course, yes, the understanding is there. But what about the multitude and number of broken homes and kids that are in situations where they do have to look for leadership outside of the home? this is what they're up against. Where society in itself, the devil, of course, is in a process of taking away these boundaries that would create functioning members for tomorrow or in the future. So then we go from marriage and civil unions to gender identity. You can decide what you want to be from one day to the next. And based on what you are, somebody's going to support your decision. No one's going to correct your decision, but somebody's going to support your decision. So for somebody to say, hey, you're a boy, you're going to grow into a man. The boy says, hey, I'm a boy, but I think I want to be a girl. There's somebody to support that decision.
Dwayne Wade.
Correct. So Dwayne Wade is an example. He's a famous person. He has a couple of sons. So instead of him saying, hey, son, we get ideas a lot of times in life that aren't good ideas, that need to be corrected. And if you're born a boy, you're born a boy for a reason, because you're going to grow into a man. You don't make the decision to be a girl because that's not what God intended. So a lot of us, we have ideas from different times that are not good ideas. So we don't need to allow those ideas to grow and manifest. We need to go do what's right. Because that's setting a boundary that's going to help to create a functioning member of this world going forward. So now, marriage, gender identity, the next one, which is what I heard them ask this last Supreme Court justice. And of course, it was a political question, but also it's a question that tears away at the boundaries of society. They asked her to define womanhood, define what a woman is. Now, she's a woman, right? But she wouldn't answer the question because she knew that the position she was basically interviewing for was as much a political position as it is a judicial position. So she wouldn't answer the political question. She wouldn't define what a woman was. Now, you take that same question to a young person. Let's just say a teenager, middle schooler, elementary age child. Define what a woman is. I know for fifth graders, they'd probably say, well, hey, whatever mom is, that's what mom is, right? Well, define to me what mom is. That would be confusing, right, to a young person. To an older person, though, you would say, okay, I see the trick that the enemy's trying to put out there. You're trying to confuse and blur the lines of what I would call a woman versus a man. Why are you trying to confuse those lines? Because you want to once again tear away at those boundaries. But the devil is saying, hey, here I go again. Here's my agenda. I'm pulling away those rules and routines that have been set forth in this world to keep things in order. Because once again, I'm going to attack these young people because they're the leaders of tomorrow. So now, define womanhood. So one person might, go down that pathway and define that. The next person might say, because I've heard them say this, well, womanhood is based on your own individual preference or definition. It's whatever you decide it is.
No, it's not.
Really? Well, that's the politically correct answer. They tell you to define what a woman is. You say, everyone has their own individual definition. Okay, now, well, what do you tell young people then? Because they're listening. They're listening.
That's right.
I hear this question. What is woman? What is a woman? Whatever you want it to be. What is your gender? Whatever you want it to be. What is the definition of marriage? Whatever you decided to be. Whatever you want it to be. There's no right or wrong. There's no correct or incorrect. It's an attack on young people.
Yes.
And it keeps going and going and going. So now we get down to this issue that we've been talking about here lately with Uvalde and, these other situations, which is gun control. So the devil starts out by trying to redefine Christianity, redefine marriage, ask you about gender identity, define womanhood, tearing away at those boundaries, creating these unstable young people that are not growing up in these homes, these homes that have proper leadership or that are being led correctly. Because I don't care if you have somebody telling you the truth and getting on your behind about things, that's exactly what you need as a young person. But I'm speaking about the kids, the multitude of children that have to go outside their homes to find proper leadership. They're the ones dealing with this stuff where the devil is trying to tear away at the boundaries that are already set forth in their mind. Now, I'm going to read a scripture here in a moment, and we've heard it before, where it talks about eternity is put in the hearts of man. Okay, well, in eternity, what has come to me is that in eternity, he gives you in existence a basic understanding, God does, of right versus wrong. Because for young people that get destroyed in innocence, as we see in Uvalde, they go on to be with the Lord, right? Well, you're not going to live in eternity and not understand right versus wrong. So that's given to you from the beginning. That's given to you as a trade-off, as a trade-off. That's given to you as a portion of eternity. Even those young kids that got destroyed, they understood right versus wrong. They know you don't take a gun and walk into a school or go harm somebody just because you're having a bad day. But it's a bigger issue there, that this society continues to create these situations. You could call it, political issues, whatever you want to call it, but it's there to tear away at the boundaries for young people, which then creates this unstable society, and we begin to see people act out more and more. So, gun control. Now, we can talk about the gun itself and how much damage it does, which I agree. Something needs to be done about that. But this idea that, you create this society that keeps being redefined, all right, for these young people, because, young people are so impressionable. As you get older, you're set in your ways, and you're not going to go with all that stuff. But you got young people jumping from one hot topic to the next hot topic. And at some point, they have to be grounded in saying, hey, look, this is a set of ideals and understandings that you need to live by. Because that's what the Bible does. But if you're being taught the Bible is outdated, or you should have the right to do whatever you feel, to choose this or choose that, all right, you're sowing a seed. That's being sown. And then you reap these situations where things just get out of control. So gun control is one of those topics, one of those consequences in society that we see where, because boundaries are being torn away, this society is starting to get more and more out of control. Because most of the gun violence is perpetrated by young people. 18, 19, 20 years old. They did have one guy, this one crazy guy, he was 60-something in New York. He shot up the subway. But that doesn't happen a whole lot. A lot of the gun violence, even they talk about in these schools, all young people. Why do they feel that they can choose to make those decisions? Because they weren't shown consequences for making the wrong decisions earlier in life. They weren't shown the boundaries, stringent boundaries, to say, hey, we just don't do that. We don't treat people that way. If you're having a bad day, you need to go talk to somebody about it. You need to go find another way to deal with your issues besides going out and hurting other people that have nothing to do with your issues. So nobody knows what that boy's problem was that went in there and shot at those kids, because, he's gone. Now they had to kill him. But something was wrong, right? And the more I hear about the amount of guns and ammunition he had, some people say he had this amount, some people say he had that amount. Whatever it was just ridiculous. He had this amount of bullets, I know he had that amount of bullets. He had this kind of gun, I know he had that kind of gun. It doesn't matter. Somewhere along the way, I think they said he was being raised, his mom had some issues. I think he was living with his grandparents or something. But somewhere along the way, he lost his compass, his moral compass, to understand you just don't do people that way. So you jump into a truck that you can't drive. I guess you drive it as far as you can from what they say, and then you wreck the truck. You jump out the truck with all your guns and you run into a school. So then the next question is, for those, as Michaela stated, yes, I am a gun owner, but the question is, when you got people in society that have gone haywire, and they've gotten their hands on these guns, and they're going crazy, how many law enforcement officers want to volunteer to go in and deal with somebody like that? Because from the reports, and we don't know what the total truth is, but from the reports, the law enforcement officers that had the automatic weapons, they stood at the door for 30 minutes. So apparently they didn't want to deal with it either. So it's something to be said about boundaries that are set up in life. They're in life for a reason. Because dealing with somebody that's out of control, nobody really wants to deal with that. Some people make a career out of it. But I guarantee you, if it was something else, an easier way to make money, at that point in time, they'd probably want to go do that. I guarantee you those officers that were standing at the door, they probably said, hey, is there a better way, easier way to make money? To stand here and hear these rounds go off and these children die, and somebody got to go in here and stop this guy. Because he's out of control. Negotiate all you want, but you take that many lives, hey, something has to happen. So, reaping and sowing. I'm going to start in Genesis 8, go through a few of these scriptures, but that's kind of what I thought about overall, you know, how this world is working and how the devil is truly working to destroy young people. And these young, impressionable minds, and how they're looking for leadership. And kids act out. And kids act out, they act up. But guess what? That means they're looking for correction. And if they know you're going to correct them, they already know, hey, I'm not going to go over here and do this, because if I start acting up, then the adult or the person in authority going to act up. Right. And they already know. They say, hey, well, I'll wait till I go around somebody else, and they'll let me act up, and then they'll do things that way. But if they know you'll show out on them, you know, and act up with them, that's it. So that's what we got to be. So Genesis 8 and 22.
They're on the best behavior.
That's it. And sometimes even when they still have them days where they struggle with that, they know, hey, if you want to make your day worse, you're going here around the wrong person acting up, and your bad day gonna be worse. But the 22nd verse, let me all right, so it says, as long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest time, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and light will never cease. All right, so that's the basics. So you got seed time and harvest time. Once again, that's a metaphor for actions versus consequences. I put that in there because, of course, you know, that was spoken to in existence to let man know that, hey, whatever you decide, and as we can see, living in this natural world, what man is deciding, which is to redefine boundaries based on how you feel. To redefine boundaries based on, if you were given a free will, you were given a free will to choose between right versus wrong. But as we can see where this free will is taking us to impact the next generation. So anytime you hear about people redefining anything, and it just doesn't make sense to you, That's the trick of the enemy. Christianity is one. All right. Those other topics I went through are also in existence, but also you got other religions out there, and they're not of God. Now, do they adhere to certain routines, rituals, and ways of discipline? Yes, they do. Because some of this stuff, the Islamic faith, they wouldn't hear it. You choosing what you are today and versus what you are tomorrow, they might just kill you and get you on out of here. And some of these Eastern countries, Middle Eastern countries.
They will kill you.
So you're not going to decide that, you're not going to corrupt their society, their way of thinking, their way of life with these, outhouse ideas. And they're not going to debate with you about it. But still, they worship, Allah, and their prophet is Muhammad, and we don't believe in it. There's some other religions the same way. I work with a lot of Indians from India when I was at Citibank. And a lot of them, they might worship multiple gods, many gods, but some of these other things about challenging marriage and gender identity and defining womanhood, they're not having it.
That's right.
Now, Citibank, and that's the other thing about these banks. Citibank, through, the force of money, power, capital, Citibank will go into a community, a continent, and try to spread this idea and understanding of alternate lifestyles. And, these people will let you do that up to a certain extent. But they got their own way of life. They're going to worship their gods. They're going to have, the little statues and everything. Some of them put them on their desks and everything like that. That's just their way of life. That's the way they was raised. And they're not getting away from, for the most part, from what they were taught in their youth. And even if you look now, a lot of times you see, these cultures, they still implement in their children's life the idea and understanding of education and different ideas and understandings around discipline, a certain way of life. So a lot of these issues are alleviated just through the way they teach life to the next generation. But it's here in America where we have these issues, where young people are acting out more. We got more school shootings than anywhere else in the world. We got more issues with gun control than anywhere else in the world. Now, yeah, we can make the argument that there's too many guns on the street. I get that. But now the guns are out there. And there's no way law enforcement can go collect 300 million guns. 400 million? 400 million guns. So, the only option that's really left on the table is that we maintain these boundaries, these moral boundaries that have been set in society for many years. Because allowing this understanding that you can redefine marriage, you can redefine gender identity or redefine your gender based on how you feel, what you identify with. I guess you can do that based on whatever friends you hang around for that day. You can be boy or girl. Womanhood, you can define that if you feel like it. Then it gets to the point where nothing has a definition. There's no boundaries left.
Only in America.
Only in America, right. Because in other countries, they will put you away.
Yeah.
Which,
I seen this meme a while ago. It was so confused. The kid asked whatever the person, or I think he was a boy, but he had on girl clothes and everything. The little boy said, are you a boy? The guy said no. He said, are you a girl? He said no. He said, are you a crackhead?
right.
he didn't have anywhere else to go. There's only boy or girl. You
Right.
either one or the other.
Right.
So it was that it's comical, but it's pretty sad that the kids' minds are taken like so,
Right.
so beyond.
It's an attack
Yeah.
on youth, on young people,
Yeah, it's crazy.
to pull away those minds. That's why you see more and more
People
Right.
are insane.
acting out. That's why you see more and more children acting out.
They even have
And,
a channel that's geared towards that now.
yeah,
They have a
I mean,
channel that's geared that for children. They got a channel.
it don't surprise me. I mean, that's the agenda going forward. But humans see it as your right to decide what you want to do. But the devil sees it as, hey, I'm going to set forth a generation of corrupt people. Is what the devil is trying to do. Now, God knows the agenda before it even started. He knew the agenda before it even started. So of course there's a stopping point, and God will be the final judge on that. But as older people still leading younger people, we have to reaffirm and confirm that these boundaries are here for a reason. And a bad idea is just a bad idea. You determining what your gender is from one day to the next is a very bad idea, because that's going to lead you down a pathway of a whole lot of confusion and other problems and dysfunctionalness and wickedness that you don't want to have in your life. So understand, boys grow into men, girls grow into women. It makes me think about my oldest daughter when she was younger. She would see me go get a haircut and then, come back from the barber, and she'd be like, boys get haircuts. I'd be like, yeah. She said, girls get their hair done. I said, yeah, you're right, you got that. And then she'd shake her head like that and go on. But that was her putting those boundaries in place. Very young, But imagine kids struggling even with that much. Now, you got men with long hair getting their hair done. You got women with long hair getting their hair done, and they're looking around to try to see what the difference is. Go ahead.
My wife and I was talking about that this morning. And we wasn't talking about it from the worldly standpoint. We were talking about how it's going on in the church.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about how the Word of God says that man is God's glory, woman is man's glory, and a woman's hair is her glory. But man have taken that over. And the thing about this, what brought it up, it was this pastor I knew. His son had messed around, got them dreads and let them dreads hang.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 1 Corinthians chapter 11 speaks about it being a dishonor for a man to have long hair. But you're seeing that a lot in churches all around. You see the braids, you see the dreads, and all that kind of stuff. Once upon a time, a good old-fashioned haircut was good enough for a guy.
Absolutely.
But now it's different.
Yeah.
Now men want to be beautiful. They want to take that over from women.
They do.
So we were talking about that very thing you talking about now.
And that's that's in our children, our black children. I'm talking about our children in general. That's in general in our children, because you go into these schools and you see a lot of young people, little boys with long hair, and
earrings.
And earrings too. And I've had conferences with some of their parents, and their dads come in the same way, long hair.
Yeah.
So that's just the way things are going. And people, they tell you, well, it's my choice. Well, it is your choice, but understand that's one of those ideas that the devil is using to blur the lines.
Mm-hmm.
Men are getting hair done, women are getting their hair done. I mean, it seems simple, and you can say, well, I'm going to teach a different way in my household, and that's perfectly fine. But if you look overall at our young men, a lot of them are growing their hair out, and that's another trick of the enemy, is what I believe.
But it's going to put weed in their head too.
Yeah.
The Word of God in Corinthians, it speaks about it. But see, if you don't go to church, or you're not being taught, and then you got these households that you got a man and a woman, and they're fighting tooth and nail because the little boy say he's playing with a toy that's a girl's toy. It don't mean he want to be a girl.
Right.
But the mother looks at it and feel like it in her mind, oh, my son want to be a girl. The boy ain't no girl. He just like tearing up stuff and playing with these things. But then there's a fight between the husband and the wife because the husband saying, I want to be a boy. And the mama saying, he's a girl. But he ain't no girl. He's a boy playing tearing up girl toys.
Yeah, it should be a fight. That's called being dysfunctional right there.
Dysfunctional home.
Called being dysfunctional.
And both parents are there.
Yeah.
See, you got a lot of that going on too. Both parents are in the household, but the mom thinks he ought to be a girl, and the dad says, "No, he's a boy."
Mom's pretty stupid if she think her son ought to be a girl.
Yeah.
Mom is super stupid.
Yeah, that's foolishness. That's one of those things again where you're creating a child,
Yeah.
or trying to create a child that's going to have a lot of emotional.
You're giving it issues from the start because
Right.
it's this white woman movie star. She took it upon herself to go adopt her some black kids,
Mm.
but now she's got both of these boys thinking they're girls.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
crazy.
appalling. It's crazy. Why would you do something like that to a kid?
That once again, you're tearing away those boundaries, and the kid is the one that has to deal with the results of that. You sow the seed,
But the parents don't got nothing.
right? Now here comes these. You committed an action or sowed the seed. Now here comes these consequences, and it's going to come in this younger generation because society keeps tearing away these boundaries.
Generation X.
They call it what they want to call it. It get crazy. You can't explain crazy. So that's where this is going, and that's what really came to me about this message today, about the shootings, about and these young people with these guns, and you say, hey, raise the age up to 21. Okay, 21, but there's also still 400 million guns already out here. They asked them about stopping the loophole or closing the possibility of these gun shows. Nobody wanted to deal with that because a lot of these guns are sold through gun shows, and they don't do background checks. So it doesn't matter what you raise the purchasing limit to. They can just walk to a gun show, which they have them here almost every weekend in the South. All you do is jump in your car, you can find a gun show here in the South, and you can still buy these guns. But the fact...
But how does an 18-year-old, 16-year-old acquire $1,800 to buy an AR-15?
He was working at Wendy's. He was working and saving his money because he had a wicked, corrupt plan.
Right.
And, you said some things about that's very important, about boundaries being destroyed, about people not having boundaries. If you raise kids and don't give them boundaries, and then they come up and they get to a place where now they bumping up against boundaries.
Right. That's where the emotional...
That's chaos and confusion.
Right. They're confused.
But here's the crazy part. When they don't understand, when they think what they're doing is right, and now somebody giving them boundaries, they think what they're doing is wrong.
Yes.
And because they respond to it in a negative, cynical way, now the world calls it mental health.
Right. Right.
It ain't mental health. It's that they've been taught one thing. They get somewhere else where somebody else in authority tells them, no, that don't work over here.
Right.
They're going to do another thing. And they go out and kill up folk because of what they got going on in their head. Now, the world want to pump a bunch of money in mental health.
Right.
It ain't about mental health. It's about boundaries. It's about teaching folks what's right and wrong. And then the enemy he working at so he can keep everybody thinking they can come up with their own situation or what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
And so it's a bunch of chaos and confusion swirling, and people responding to chaos and confusion in violent ways, and now they call that mental health.
Right. So in public school, regular education, when you fall so far behind, they label you. But sometimes they label kids as having these emotional issues and stuff like that, and they'll label that. But they got other labels that when you look at some of these, they call them IEPs. When you look at some of them, it's not really a label. It's just saying that they're behind. And they're too far behind to basically be remediated within a short period of time. So the same thing with mental health. See, you get so far off track mentally because you weren't shown these boundaries And then when someone shows you boundaries, you get to acting up and acting out. And then, yeah, they might try to work with you and say, hey, okay, I saw you act out about this, but this boundary is here for a reason, for public safety. This is why we're doing this. But then if that person responds and says, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, I've been doing it this way forever, I'm going to keep doing it this way, then they'll go ahead and say, yeah, you too far gone. And you too far gone to be reeled in. And yeah, now it's mental health. So what are we going to do about it?
That's what they call it, mental health. But you ain't mental health. You ain't mentally sick because you confused and confused on what real boundaries are, and somebody challenging you about them boundaries, and you get mad, upset, and angry, and you do stupid stuff. If it's a young kid, he pouting and cussing and saying stuff he ain't got no. It ain't cause you got a mental problem.
Well,
it's because you got twisted boundaries. You didn't set the boundaries. We don't have the same standard. It'd be like being in the military. You go into combat, and everybody get to put their own standard in. A bunch of folk gonna get killed.
Yeah, ain't gonna work.
Everybody driving for the same goal. That's to defeat the enemy. So you got to be on the same. Everybody got to be on the same page. If everybody get to put their own page in, you're gonna have a bunch of folks killed.
Right.
And that's what they got going on. And since they can't come into the realization that we got this thing twisted with boys and girls and men and women and people married and all kind of stuff, everybody just twisting up everything, doing what they want to do, and they reaping the harvest of it. Now they want to say folks sick. No, they ain't sick. Right. You done created chaos and confusion. And now the harvest is,
here it comes.
You got a bunch of Septembers out here and think it's the wild, wild west.
Right.
And they want to take them and over-medicate them.
Right. And they'll try to over-medicate you, which further creates a bigger issue, because some of the medications drive kids over the edge, too. And then the thing is this, you get to this point where, like in Uvalde, they're standing at the door. They got their weapons. They got their armor on. Well, who's going to be first?
And the one guy went in there, got grazed right down the middle of his head. They showed one of the cops had staples down the middle of his head with him. Yeah. The boy tried to kill him, and it just grazed the top of his head enough that they had to put staples in there to close it up.
He was about an inch from having his lights put out.
Exactly.
Because an inch lower, it would have been over.
That's right.
So that's the thing. Right. And so we got to stay prayerful, because look, young people, I'll say this, they may not know the way, but they got the strength to do something. And I think there is a scripture in there about the old are sent because they know the way, and the young are sent because they're strong.
That's right. It's written.
So that's what we have to be prayerful about, because young people are future leaders, and they're trying to be corrupted in their childhood with the tearing down of these boundaries. And it's unfortunate that in the court of law and the judicial branches, more and more of these boundaries are being torn down and then being written down as laws. So it's not exactly a law that a man could go in the bathroom with a woman, but it was written as an executive order.
Or depending on what state you live in.
Well, even with that, if it's not a federal law, somewhere in there it could be challenged. But still, the idea and understanding that as grown people, you got to stand by, because I got 2 girls, and if one of my daughters goes into the restroom and then I see another bearded man that says he identifies as a woman, even if he doesn't have a dress on, because it's not how you dress is what you identify as. So you can look like a man all day and say you just identify as a woman, and you want to go in the female restroom, right? I'm probably going to go in there and tell mine to come on so I don't act up. Because you legally cannot say that man-looking person cannot go in the girl's restroom, because it's what they identify as.
That's corruption.
So that's the tearing down of boundaries. That is, right, corrupting young people, because older people aren't going for it. So I'm going to go on the next one is Ecclesiastes 1, starting at the 7th verse. And this talks about cycles. So it says, all streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ears it still feel of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already long ago. It was here before our time. There is no remembrance of men of old, and even those who are yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow. So, what has been before will be again. Meaning, God has seen this corruption take hold before. God has seen the plot of the devil come forth before. So, he's not ill prepared. So there is a solution to these issues that we're talking about. There is a solution that God has for this attack on young people. So we don't have to worry. But this next scripture I'm going to read, it just talks about love. And that's what we have to do our part as Christians. It talks about the greatest commandment of them all is love. And I talk to my daughter now, she's into team sports, and she talks about how excited she is, which excites me, which is kind of funny. I kind of get giddy now like a kid, like she's going to go play. I'm like, oh, yeah, great. But I tell her a lot about doing her part. I say, hey, you're part of a team. You work on being the best you can be. You improve your skills. If it's something you didn't do well today, work at being better at it tomorrow. If it's something that you're struggling with, then you need to work on it in your spare time to get better at it, because that's what athletes do. You'll never know the amount of hours that athletes train, over and away by themselves, because they don't dock those hours. You only see the end result when you see them performing somewhere in front of people, but hours and hours and hours are spent in preparation somewhere else. So I kind of give her those types of pointers, what to do, what to look for, stuff like that. I can tell she's getting it because she's always had these light bulb moments where if you tell her something and she's really thinking about it, she'll just stop talking for a while and she won't respond. And my oldest daughter, she talks a lot. Now my youngest one, she's more like me. She doesn't really, she'll find a friend every now and then, but she don't have many friends. My oldest daughter, though, she'll just talk, but then when you make her think, she's going to stop talking. It's time to think. So, Matthew 22.
Let me just say this right quick about Ecclesiastes 1 and 11. It's so much packed into that one verse. There's no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come afterwards. What that's telling us is people die and go off the scene, and all the stuff that's been done under them, it ain't remembered because people done rotated off. But the ones that's coming on, they don't know because they weren't there. And that's just amazing how it's telling you. It might be new to us, but it ain't new. It ain't new to God, just like you say.
Yeah. That's it. So Matthew, let's say 22, starting at 36 through 39. So it's the greatest commandment. So it says, teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on those two commandments. So once again, how do we do our part? First, we do have to stand in truth. I think for most of us in here at our age groups, we're not going to go for a lot of this, thinking of just tearing away these boundaries for young people. Because naturally, we just can't go against who we are. So if someone tells you or asks you to define womanhood, number one, you already know that's going to be foolishness from the start. So you're not going to get into this whole back and forth about that. And what I do, and this is for me, is I'd say, hey, if you're born a girl, you're a girl. You're going to grow into a woman. If you're born a boy, you're going to grow into a man. And anything else besides that is dysfunctional and it's confusing and it's not of God. And we're going to move on because we're not going to have an extended debate about these social issues. And we already know God has already gave us a pathway, a set of rules and regulations to live by. But in doing our part, we are to extend love because that's our part. The rules have already been set. We don't have to go back and relay the boundaries or relay the framework of the gospel. That's already been done. We're just a footprint in time.
That's right. So
we're here to do our part. So when we get upset and we all get anger, but we keep it moving so that we don't get in the way of what God is doing. I know we heard that a billion times, All right, so moving on, I'm going to go to 2 Corinthians 5. And I put this one in here. It talks about our heavenly dwelling. So, in all that we do, we all get tired, and we all get, we get fed up with some of the things that we deal with in life. And sometimes if you admit, hey, sometimes you want to go out and hurt some folks. I got a situation now I'm dealing with where I have to keep going back to court. They keep ruling in my favor, but it ain't going the way that the judge said it should go. So I'm getting upset with the process, but I'm saying, hey, I'm going to stick to the process because it'll work out. So, 2 Corinthians 5, 1 through 10. It says, now, we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hands. Meanwhile, we groan, longing to be clothed with our heavenly dwelling, because when we are clothed, we will not be found naked. For while we are in this tent, we groan and are burdened because we do not wish to be unclothed, but to be clothed with our heavenly dwelling, so that what is mortal may be swallowed up by life. Now, it is God who has made us for this very purpose and has given us the Spirit as a deposit, guaranteeing what is to come. Therefore, we are always confident and know that as long as we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. We live by faith and not by sight. We are confident, I say, and would prefer to be away from the body and at the home with the Lord. So we make it our goal to please Him, whether we are at home or in the body. or away from it. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive what is due to him for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad. So, long story short, when you're having issues in this life, this is telling you how to exit this world. Okay? So you're going to put off this corruptible body to be with God. And then you're going to be judged based on what you did, whether good or bad. Long story short. So, for young people and old people alike that get so caught up with this life and do things like this 18-year-old did in Uvalde, where you go off, commit this heinous act to take innocence, to destroy innocence, and then somebody has to take your life to stop you. Well, guess what? You're going to be judged. And if somebody really got to the true core of the issue, it's because he had lost his sense of direction. Because he didn't have boundaries. One picture, he's on there looking like a girl. Another picture, he's on there looking like a boy. Another picture I seen, he's on there looking like something in between a boy and a girl. Hey, why? Because he can define what womanhood is. He can define what his gender is. He can determine what the boundaries of marriage should include. And nobody was there to correct him. And then he got to a point where he was just too far gone. He was 18. Oh, I can buy a gun now. I'm hurting. I can go hurt somebody else. Now, as people keep saying, if he really wanted that real smoke, he could have found some people that would have obliged him. And when he started firing, they would have started firing back. But no, he didn't do that. He ran into an elementary school. Right.
All they had to do was go in the hood.
Right. And they would have found out he was shooting outside, they would have sent some back out. But no, you run into an elementary school, these kids in here learning, doing what kids do, and you create this chaotic situation. So much so, the police don't even really know what to do.
And you know what? They had people out there in that neighborhood that had to smoke for them. But the police spent their time keeping them out of the school.
Right.
They had this stuff and they were trying to get in there. They were going in there and smoke him up.
They had, I seen a story about an off-duty police officer. He was in the barbershop getting a haircut.
Got a shotgun when he got his kid.
Right. He got a call from his wife. His wife was in the school, and he asked the barber for his gun. Left the barbershop, went down there, got his family, and came up out of there. While these other federal agents are standing at the door with all their weaponry and body armor and won't go through the door.
Even down to the mother. They tried to keep out of there, and she told him, say, do whatever you're going to do to me. But she broke ranks, and when it got her to, she came up out of there.
She was a farm worker out there.
Yeah. So that's what we're up against, And I know as older leaders, sometimes just us going throughout our day and dealing with so many different things, especially with gas prices, we kind of overlook some of this stuff, and then it really doesn't hit home until you see a kid do something like in Uvalde or in these other places, and you really have to stop and think like, man, you know what? Where could somebody had stopped and grabbed this kid and just dealt with him before he got to this point?
But he just wanted to me, because I think about the black girl and the two kids from University Christian took over there down the street from Wilson back behind them pine trees and killed that girl. And they asked them why they did it. They said they want to see how it feels to kill somebody. And then you got the other one that stabbed a little hot butt 15-year-old girl, stabbed her all the time. And then
but see, even with that one, now I don't know about the other one, but with that one that you just talked about, they was supposedly dating, and he had been abusing her while they were dating.
But it's just their mindset that
So,
we're talking about.
Yeah, but where was the parents to say, hey, who's hitting on my daughter?
Yeah.
I mean, why would they
It's
out
been
that
hit on
time
mine.
of night anyway?
Right. That's another. What are you doing out there? I don't know what time it was, but
It
One
was
day in the morning.
yeah.
You out all night, you 15.
Right.
You know how popular you is.
Right.
Popular, you're behind back there in your room.
Right.
But if
You know
you
what I'm
go,
saying?
if you go
I
back
tell you
to
what.
the house,
I tell you what. If they had to beat that one back there, that girl back there, I'd be having a jailhouse ministry now. I wouldn't be here for you.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well,
Raise your kids. Talk to them.
I feel like, when other kids can see certain boundaries in children's lives. So, for an example, if for us in here, if one of your kids has a friend or is dating or something, and they come by your house and see you or talk to you, then you're going to express that, hey, my kid is valuable to me,
For real.
and I don't want to have to act up. So don't you act up, because if you act up with my kid, I'm going to have to act up. So that boundary is already set.
right?
But if a kid comes by your house, or doesn't come by your house, or never has to come by your house, or never comes in contact with you, but they're constantly in contact with your child, they're saying, hey, I don't really see
No boundaries.
no boundaries. Right.
That's the whole thing.
So things start to escalate. They start somewhere and then they escalate, because I still don't see children out here yet now that's just serial killers. You know what I mean? That's just out here just taking lives. But you see it escalate to a point where a kid will run into a school or go shoot up a mall or go grab a gun and go back to school where they're being bullied and shoot. Right? So it starts somewhere and then it escalates. My point is that as current leaders and adults with these children, we have to be on the lookout to see where those red flags come up initially. And I say that because now that I am teaching, I do work around kids all the time, and I do see kids from every now and then that I say, hey, that kid don't seem all the way right. But they keep, the kid keeps coming to school, and other adults would say the same thing. Yeah, one day he don't seem all the way right, or that kid is kind of weird. Like they had one kid that I can't think of his name right now, but he was always off. And then I had another kid named Chase. Now Chase was mildly autistic, and he battled with anxiety and stuff like that. And the only reason I know that is because he told me. But when you talk to Chase was a smart kid, but he was like, all right, Chase is just a little bit off. And the problem with that is that when you're around other children and they don't have the proper boundaries, they'll push a kid like that over the edge.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is the type of kid. He was a very low key, mild mannered kid. He wouldn't hurt anybody. But you keep pushing him, you don't know how he might respond,
That's right.
because he battles anxiety, mildly autistic. I don't know exactly how that impacts a kid when you got mild autism and you got anxiety. But when they mixing that together, and I don't know if he was taking any medication, he probably was, and then kids are picking at him because he's about to go to middle school. He was in 5th grade, now he's going to be in 6th grade. He's about to go to middle school. Look.
It's gonna be worse.
Right. And people begin to see, okay, Chase ain't all the way there, but, he just ain't all the way there. So they start picking on him.
I ain't no killer, but don't push me.
Right. And then you say, man, Chase was all right kid. He wouldn't hurt anybody, but you got to reach out and grab him before. And then he was another one. I think he was. He always talked about his mom and his sister. He never really talked about any other family. But I don't know exactly what his situation was at home. But I'll stop there. I think I got the.
But you know, a lot of parents that have those kids that have, during the time I was teaching, a lot of them didn't want them at home. They would hurry and push them in school. It's like they were there just to Lord, please let them say, oh.
Right, I know what you mean, because I had one or two like that too. But even with them going to school and coming home, boundaries need to be understood. That you don't just go to school and act up and do what you want to do. That's why they're looking for more guys like me. You know, because when I start raising my voice, they hear me cleaning down the hallway, across the school. You know, I'm on the playground yelling at them.
But that's what it takes. It takes
Yeah.
that. That's why they're trying to get more black
They are.
men into the school system. Because a lot of these kids, I ain't no school teacher, but I went to school. But see, I got the raising of your grandmama, which is Montana's, what I used to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't play the radio. And one thing about her, she was equal opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And all she couldn't beat her, she said her to my daddy, my granddaddy. And let him deal out some punishment. And then my daddy came on your granddaddy, he couldn't go to bed until he beat us. Whether we did something or not, as she said we did, we got to beat
You
him.
did, yeah. But that's boundaries being set.
Yeah.
Now kids don't have that.
A lot of them don't have it.
So they start going, you know, mentally, and then some of them they medicate, they put them on these
You know
medications.
what they do now? Back then, they put a strap on you. That was medication.
Right. And that is medication. That connects whatever's going on in your body
Yeah.
with your brain.
Yeah.
You know? And I think, you know, kids need more of that, but
As long as they don't do it.
not right. Well, you can do it, but you can't do it up to you can't break the skin.
Yeah.
You know, I'll say that. And only reason I know that is I've talked to them people quite a few times about mine, and you can still, in the state of Florida, you can still put hands on your kids.
You
All
can't
right.
break the skin.
You can't break the skin.
Or have big wealth where everybody can say.
Right. Can't do that. All right. That's all I got.